bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! It is a Football Friday here on Birds 365 as the countdown continues to the 2022 season. And the Eagles are a mere handful of days away before they report to camp. So we'll be breaking down the Birds all day. Two good Bird guests coming your way. And Johnny Mack, for the next several hours, chances are we'll be talking about quarterbacks. We won't be talking about the punting competition. If there is one for the Philadelphia Eagles this year, still isn't possible on paper since Eagles don't have a second punter on the roster. No, we will be talking about quarterback because yesterday's signing could change the landscape of quarterback and values in the National Football League. Josh Rosen is the backup quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Could reset the entire market. He's a stone cold bust. What the hell? I went down the road of could Gardner Minshew interest the Cleveland Browns yesterday. They should have been listening to me, not signing Josh Rosen. Yeah, Browns going nowhere fast. Anyway, no, the quarterback that I referred to is, of course, Kyler Murray, new deal. It's not, it's an extension. But the first deal has to end first, including his rookie season, and then pick up 5 years thereafter. So he's under contract for the next 7 years with the Arizona Cardinals at $230.5 million, which, of course, is $0.5 million. You say 0.5. Yeah, that's $500,000, ladies and gentlemen. $0.5 million more than Deshaun Watson to make a point. Yes, the quarterback market, and this happens all the time. It's nothing new for this offseason. Happens every offseason. We're just paying closer attention to what's going down now. The quarterback market is ever changing, Johnny Mack.
Yes, it is. So technically, if you want to go, obviously the most important part is fully guaranteed money, and that's why Deshaun's contract is better because everything is fully guaranteed. But, this one kind of said, man, you know what? This got me thinking, like, we've talked about Jalen Hurts and potential extensions after this season and what it's going to be. My God. I mean, I'm at the point where it's number 10 now in the NFL is $35 million. That's how quickly things have changed over the last calendar year. You've had Aaron Rodgers, you've had Deshaun Watson, now you have Kyler Murray, Josh Allen back in September, Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford. On and on and on and on. $35 million is the number 10 slots in the NFL right now from an average annual value perspective. And guess what, Jody? It's only going up. Joe Burrow's down the pike. Justin Herbert's down the pike. You think they're going to ask for less than $230.5 million? I mean, that's the starting point. That's like, I'm not taking that.
John, we got one in the offing. You got to wait at least a year. Lamar Jackson showed up for Ravens camp yesterday. Whether he he's not holding out. So will he play in and show up and say, I'm here, but yeah, I really don't want to practice because I don't want to take the chance of getting hurt. So we need to figure out the particulars. But Lamar Jackson's already got an MVP in his back pocket. Kyler Murray doesn't have one of these. So
Yeah.
how does Lamar Jackson's negotiation start at less than 230, but make it 231? So he goes slightly higher.
No, he'll be in that group. I just think I brought up Burrow and Herbert because I think they're even going to be higher because of their potential and moving forward the way they're looked at and upon the league. The thing with Lamar, he's got to get an agent. You know, sorry, Lamar, you got to get an agent. You got to start at 231, as you said. Yeah, and he'll get more than Kyler Murray, and he should get more, by the way. And then you'll keep going from there, and you keep going from there. My point from an Eagles perspective, because that's the most important, that's what you got to do. I mean, if you're the Arizona Cardinals, that's what you got to do. And for me, Kyler Murray kind of puts it into a nice little bow for me because he's obviously a very good player. He's explosive. He's one of the most dynamic players in the league. He certainly turned that franchise around. But I don't know. I don't consider him to be a superstar. I consider him to be a splashy guy who makes a lot of splashy plays that can win games for you. But I don't look at him as all right, that guy's going to make me consistent year in and year out, year out. But people can debate that. That's why I put it into focus to me. Jalen Hurts is never getting to Kyler Murray's level. Not even close. I'm sorry. People don't want to hear that. Ain't happening. Doesn't have that talent level, doesn't have that skill set. I don't want to pay him. I don't want to pay. I'm to the point where, and by him, I mean Kyler Murray, I don't want to pay him that. It hamstrings my ability to build a championship roster around him. The Cardinals have to pay him that. So you're stuck in this NBA mentality of, and I don't like it. And you know, it's like, you got to get certain guys or you don't have a chance. I'm not saying we're there in the NFL, but boy, we're getting close when it comes to the quarterback position because there's only, I don't know, how deep do you want to go, Jody? I would put Rodgers in the category. I would put Mahomes, Allen. You know, Stafford just won the Super Bowl, but he's 34. I don't even know if I put him in the category. And Burrow and Herbert, because those are the two young quarterbacks that I really like. And that's about evaluation more than anything else. Even the next level, the whoever you want to put, Deshaun Watson, I don't know. I mean, I saw him win 4 games with now that was a really bad roster, and he's a really great player, but shouldn't I can't picture. Here's kind of what I'm trying to say, and I'm stumbling. I can't picture Aaron Rodgers winning 4 games. I don't care what you give him. Talk about losing Devontae Adams. Talk about losing whoever you want. I can't picture him winning 4 games in a season if he's healthy. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at this stage. Now, as he ages out, you know, he's getting older, still in the prime of his career. There's certain guys, that's why I say about Peyton Manning, you know, once he hit the ground running, obviously he struggled the first year. Once he hit the ground running, it's double digits, consistent. I always say Indianapolis would start with, hey, 10 wins is going to be a bad season. That's a bad season. You could mark down 10 wins. And if you get to 13, that's a good season. You know, if you're at 11 or 12, you're saying, we struggled a little bit. And then you get to the playoffs and you roll the dice. Boy, I mean, this to me, we're going to talk about it because we have to talk about it for another year. Eagles can't move forward with Jalen Hurts, period. End of sentence. So,
but you got to move forward with somebody.
Yeah. So you churn it over. That's what I'm saying. You go to the college system. You know, The Eagles don't want to go lame duck. If you want to go lame duck, if you want to go all 4 years, go all 4 years. I don't care. Roll it over. Say you got a quarterback for 4 years. And if he doesn't prove to be that superstar quarterback, and I mean tippy-top superstar quarterback, roll it over. Maybe it's 5 years if it's a first-round pick. Roll it over. Don't pay these guys. Don't pay the $35 million quarterbacks of the world. The Kirk Cousins, the Derek Carrs. Derek Carr's ahead of that. Don't pay those guys. You're just hamstringing your ability. You're better off going the Jimmy Garoppolo route. Go the game manager route. Try to win games. Try to build the rest of the roster. But he's overpaid too. So it really is a conundrum, Jody. It really is.
So what would you suggest the Baltimore Ravens do?
The Ravens are in the top. They got to pay Lamar. They got to pay him, just like Arizona.
He's above the line for you.
Yes, he's above the. Well, he's above the line from the perspective I know they have to pay him. From my personal line, he's not above the line. I know Arizona had to pay Kyler Murray. I can't criticize Arizona for paying Kyler Murray. They had to do it. I mean, they had to do it. But ultimately, I think personally, it's not going to work. It's not going to get him a championship. He's not at that level where and by the way,
if you were the GM, you would advise the owner, we got to let this guy walk.
No, I just said you have to pay him. You have to pay him. But deep in the dark recesses.
Whoa. You got to explain this to me.
You
say you have to pay him, but you say you wouldn't pay them. So I'm trying to figure out where the dividing line is.
I said I would pay him. I would pay Kyler Murray. I would play Lamar Jackson. But then I would go to my office and I would shut out the light and I would know deep down I have no chance. That's the difference. You got to do it.
As the general manager of the team to give your team a chance?
There's politics. You know this, Jody. Not everything's in a vacuum. You know, you got to sell tickets. There's marketing. There's these people are the face of the franchises. They're successful. You can't argue to the public that, well, I know Kyler's really good. I know he's the number 1 overall pick. I know the numbers he picks up. I know he turns us into a championship, a playoff level team. I know he does this, he does that. And then you're going to try to spin to him. Oh, but by the way, let's go back to the crappy Arizona Cardinals until we play Sixers for 15 years and keep rolling it over and keep rolling it over and keep rolling. You can't sell that to the public. But that's the way I feel personally. So, you know, you got to play the game, unfortunately, the way you play the game. But my personal belief is everything has to be perfect to win with these quarterbacks. And it might be. You know, we've seen it in the past. You can spike and win a year here or there. But when you're talking about consistency, like what Andy Reid preached, what Andy Reid tried to build, what Andy Reid has built is, you know, be consistent every year, get in the dance, and then roll the dice and maybe the stars align. And people will criticize Andy Reid. They have here. You know, he never won here. He only won one with Patrick Mahomes. Only one. I hate that term. And they still say, he should have won this. He should have won that. He should have won more. Everybody says that. But the realistic job of a GM is to be consistent job of a GM as a coach to put you in the position to win each and every year. It becomes so much more difficult if you're paying $45-50 million to good quarterbacks, but not great quarterbacks. But that's the cost of doing business at that position.
All right,
and that's the difficulty of the Eagles have right now.
Right. So that's where I'm going next. If you believe that the Cardinals, to use your phrase, had to pay Kyler Murray, they had to do it, but you don't really believe he's good enough to win them a championship, but they had to do it just to sustain their fan base and the other reasons that you gave. Where are the Eagles and their quarterback right now? Is Jalen Hurts going to be one of those guys? Because I know you're not going to say, oh, he's good enough, they have to sign him, and yes, they could win a Super Bowl with him. He's in that gray area, that nebulous middle area. What would you suggest to Howie Roseman right now? Do they have to sign Jalen Hurts the same way the Cardinals just signed Kyler Murray.
No, they don't. And that's my point. Jalen Hurts is never going to be Kyler Murray. And I don't believe in Kyler Murray.
So Kyler Murray's above the line. Jalen Hurts is below the line.
Kyler Murray is way above Jalen Hurts. Way above Jalen Hurts.
So you don't like Jalen Hurts at all, because if Kyler Murray's way above Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray isn't good enough to actually make you believe you can win a Super Bowl with him, then Jalen Hurts isn't even close.
And that's why I said, that's why I put for me, it put the punctuation on it, Jody, that contract. It put the punctuation. I've already made my decision. I'm trying to get CJ Stroud. I'm trying to get Bryce Young. I'm turning this thing over. If I can't get him, maybe I let him play out his contract. I'm going the college route. I'm turning this thing over. I'm not paying mediocre quarterbacks $35 million. There's no stinking way. There is no stinking way I'm doing that as a GM.
I am not there yet. Oh, I could get there depending on how Mr. Hurts plays this year, but I know we all want to make decisions this minute.
I just did.
Yeah, and feel free, Johnny Mac. And guess what? If you're right, if Jalen Hurts has a lousy year this year, the fact that,
and by the way, I don't think he is.
The July 22nd, on July 22nd, John McMullen got on record and said, Jalen Hurts is not getting an extension. There's no way he's staying here. We're turning over. The Eagles are drafting a quarterback next year. It's nice that you got out ahead of the game, but it really doesn't signify anything.
No, because I'm not in charge.
Not only can't they draft either Young or Stroud, I don't think they're going to be in position to do that. So we don't even know who the other potential guys would be. So it's nice to make a command decision at this point. There's nothing you can do about it. You got to play out a season this year.
I'm not in charge, but I've already made the decision. First of all, the Eagles, people forget, and the Eagles do a good job of this. And I said, they already tried to get better this offseason. So the old adage is, don't listen to what a team does. Watch what they do. They wanted Russell Wilson. They wanted Deshaun Watson. Now, you could say by the way, Kyler Murray's another one. When Kyler was, making some noise about getting out of Arizona, I don't think anybody really took Arizona's that seriously, because they knew Arizona was not going to let him get away. But the Eagles didn't seem to have any real interest in Kyler Murray, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. But
maybe they believe the Johnny Mac wrecking that this guy's just not good enough.
Yeah, but he's way better. See, that's my problem, Jody. He's not good enough, and he's way better. That's my problem. That's my personal problem. He's way better, and he's not good enough. He's not the Mahomes. He's not the Josh Allen. He's not the Aaron.
You're right. Rodgers. He's neither of those two guys we're talking about.
He doesn't have the potential of Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Those are the two young guys that I look at. So he's really good. He's not good enough. And Jalen can't reach that ceiling.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that yet. Could he get to Kyler Murray's level? Maybe. Yeah, I'm not writing that off. Can he get to Josh Allen's level? No. Can he get to Mahomes' level? No. That's not happening. But I'm not writing off Kyler Murray just yet. And here's the beauty of it. We don't have to decide today. I'm glad that John did. More power to you. But it doesn't matter. They can't do anything. They couldn't make a commitment to him if they wanted to. It's against the rules.
I know. And by the way, I'm not saying Jalen's going to have a bad year. I think he's going to have a good year. I think the Eagles are going to make the playoffs. His ceiling is not the ceiling you need to pay somebody $45 million. Even $35 million. I don't want to pay that ceiling. I don't want 35 is again, then you're in the Kirk Cousins range. I don't want any part of that. So look, unfortunately, and I wrote this on JAKIB Sports, in a lot of ways, the rest of the league and the way they're paying elite quarterbacks are making the Eagles' decision easy. They're making the Eagles' decision easy. Easy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm going to give Jalen Hurts this year to show that he's not good enough. And then if he is, it's an easy decision. We got months before we have to get to the end of the year. We got to let him play out this season. And then we got to see.
He's going to make the playoffs. Then it's only going to get obfuscated by playoffs and spin and narrative. Eagles know. Eagles already know. They know.
Yeah.
They know.
They may know, but they can't act on it until after the year is come and gone. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald with the Mac and Mac guys. All right, you know who's coming up next? John Stolnis, our buddy who does articles for Bleeding Green Nation and his podcast, Eye on the Enemy, as well. A must listen for you Eagle fans out there. John Stolnis up next here on Birds 365.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really. Don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left. Fake them out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. McMullen, McDonald, and our bud John Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation jumps aboard here with us on Birds 365. All right, John, I know you hopped on early. Thank you for that. So you heard me, McMullen, going back and forth about the quarterback position in the NFL. Is this just a prelim, a 12-month prelim to when the Eagles move away from Jalen Hurts because he's just not good enough?
Well, I Jody Mack, I'm kind of where you are on this. I'm in a wait and see approach on Jalen Hurts. I know how I think this is going to go. I don't think he has the talent of Kyler Murray. I don't think he's a Lamar Jackson. And so if that proves to be the case during the course of the season, and I think we'll know even if they make the playoffs, we'll be able to tell, I think, based on how he plays against some of the better teams on the schedule. And there's not a lot of them because it's a good schedule for the Eagles, but I'm in wait and see mode. And I agree. You don't pay a guy like Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray money if he has another Hurts season like he did last year, or if he's only slightly better this year. But I think there's time. I think it's what the Kyler Murray contract does is it does give you a barometer. It gives you a good idea of what the Eagles would be looking at. And it will, I think, impact their decision whether or not to move forward with Jalen Hurts or to sign a veteran quarterback next offseason or get somebody in the draft. I'll tell you what, I'm not 100% convinced that if things don't work out with Jalen Hurts this offseason, that it's going to be a guy that they draft in the first round. When you look at the roster that they're putting together here in 2022, granted, there are a lot of guys on one-year deals, but you're putting together a roster that's meant to win both this year and in 23 and 24 and 25. Do you bring in a rookie quarterback, a first-round pick, who probably won't be ready to win on day one and sacrifice a season when you've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in his third year and whoever else you've got? Hassan Reddick is going to be, in the prime of his career. You only have Darius Slay for maybe another year or two of top level talent. Do you spend one of those years with a rookie quarterback who will be learning the NFL in his first season, even if it is a really talented one? I'm not sure you do that unless it's the very top guy or somebody, you can move up into the top 5. And I don't know if we have the season I hope we think we're going to have, how high are these first round picks going to be? So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and to me, John, the bigger thing is as you mentioned, it's a barometer. So, when you start talking about the numbers and they're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, because we all know how this works. And the next guy, Lamar Jackson's going to start at 231, and then Burrow's going to come up and Herbert, and on we go. Mm-hmm. So, the salary cap's going to go up as well. So from a percentage standpoint, you can argue these guys are underpaid still rather than overpaid. But from a roster building standpoint, it becomes more difficult. And you talk about what the Eagles have been able to do, and I give Howie Roseman tremendous credit, is build up a pretty good roster from 2 to 53. I think we all look at it and say, wow, this is pretty deep. I know you just went through the bleeding green. You just went through the position groups and kind of ranked them. Pretty deep group overall when compared to other teams. Part of the reason for that is they don't have to pay Jalen Hurts. So when you look forward, ultimately you have to make a decision, right? The Eagles still have some time. We all know that. But it's the barometer that concerns me, because you got to be at the Kyler Murray level to get Kyler Murray money. I think the ceiling there is kind of limited. We know from a trade standpoint, that's probably not going to happen. So you start thinking, all right, well, where are the guys a little bit lower than that? And then you start looking at the 35 million guys. And that's where I brought up the Kirk Cousins of the world, the Jared Goffs of the world, the Carson Wentz's of the world. That's where you're at. That's what these guys are getting paid. And look, I think Cousins specifically, because to me, he's always been sort of a demarcation line. He's a good quarterback, but you're not going to win anything with him. He's going to put up numbers. And I think ultimately he's a little bit underrated. But what's the goal here? I hate it because I'm not a Sixers process guy. I hate the win or lose mentality, Ricky Bobby mentality. I called it. If you're not first, you're last. Mm-hmm. I hate that thought process. But man, is that where pro sports are going? Like, if we can't win the championship, what is this about? That's my concern.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid concern. I think there's something to be said for the process. And last year, I think we look back at last season, and we knew that team wasn't winning a Super Bowl, but everyone was heavily invested in getting to the playoffs, because winning games is fun during the regular season. Getting ready for a playoff game is fun. And as the 49ers showed us last year, really, you never know what's going to happen once the tournament begins. And Jimmy Garoppolo came from a dropped interception away from getting them to the Super Bowl, and he's probably going to be on another team in another couple of weeks. And so when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2017, Carson Wentz was on his rookie deal. They were able to do that because, like you said, they invested in the rest of the team around him. Now, I'm not someone who believes that you shouldn't pay big money to a quarterback that's worth it so that you can pay the other guys. A quarterback is the most important position in any professional sport. And the Eagles need to make sure that they have identified who that's going to be at some point. Can they kind of, struggle along like they did during the Buddy Ryan era and the Rich Kotite era and the Ray Rhodes era with some of these guys who they come in, they give you a year or two, you get to the first or second round of the playoffs, and then you're out. Are we okay with that as a fan base to kind of just roll along like that until we stumble into a Donovan McNabb or we stumble into a Carson Wentz at the height of his powers and gets you in deeper into the playoffs? And it's hard to know without a roadmap of knowing what veteran quarterbacks might be available next offseason. There could be a possibility that you have an offseason like this one where some big name quarterbacks are changing teams. And if you've got a roster that's built to win, maybe you can bring one of those guys on for a year or two. But what would be the best case scenario, obviously, for everyone is if Jalen Hurts plays really well this year. That would answer a lot of questions. If he's a Pro Bowl type quarterback and he shows you he's got a Lamar Jackson type skill set in there this year, then that answers the questions. But I'm leaning against that possibility, and I don't know where the Eagles go from here.
Yeah, see, here's where I have a tough time wrapping around my head around the stance John's taken today. I want to have at least an open mind about where the Eagles are going to next, if not Jalen Hurts. But that's where I'll make a strong step. I don't think they can get Bryce Young and or CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be in position. They're going to win 10 games, so their first-round draft pick's not going to be high. I think New Orleans is going to be pretty good. I think they win a minimum of 8. Could win 9. So those two picks combined, not going to get you into the 1-2 slot in the draft. So who's it going to be?
Yeah.
I'm saying there's a drop-off after the first 2. Will Levis, Tanner McKee.
Well, I agree with that. Let me just throw in, and then I'll have John. The second part of my thing is, I agree. The Eagles, I said, Jalen Hurts is going to have a good year. He's not going to have a bad year. He's going to have a similar year to what he had last year. He's a good player. The Eagles are going to make the playoffs. I believe that. That's my prediction. He's going to do some really nice things. He might be a Pro Bowl alternate. Might even maybe be the third guy in the Pro Bowl for a realistic standpoint. That's my concern. And at that point, you start thinking, well, we got a good player here. Let's pay him $35 million. That's my concern. So the second part of my thought process is you keep rolling it over. You go to the college mentality. Say, I got a guy for 4 years. I got a guy for 5 years, maybe if he's a first-round pick. But if he's not that superstar, I'm going to roll it over. I'm not paying a good player $35-40 million so I can't build the rest of my roster. Am I crazy, John Stolnis?
You're not crazy. You've got to really believe in the quarterback, and I think that's the key. We just don't know. There's so much we don't know, and the beautiful thing is we don't have to know just yet. We don't have to make a decision
4
just
years
right now. Yeah. So I mean, you've got some time with Jalen Hurts here, and if he is in the Pro Bowl, if he's one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the NFC, if he takes you to the NFC Championship game, then maybe you do pay him, because then he will have shown you that he can take you on an extended playoff run, that he can win a couple of playoff games, that he can beat a playoff caliber quarterback. Now that's assuming he doesn't stink in the playoffs and they win with defensive turnovers and whatnot. You just have to kind of, I think the eye test will be there. We'll be able to also look at some of the metrics that are out there and be able to see whether or not he's improved in these different areas with his accuracy, with throwing the ball over the middle, how he does with all of this talent around him that he has, because like we've been saying for weeks now, there's no excuse for Jalen Hurts not to play well this year if he has the ability. And I am in total wait and see mode. I'm not stressing about whether or not we pay him yet or what kind of decisions we make about it yet, because time is on our side right now.
Agreed. That's exactly the same way I look at John Stolnis here. I'm Birds 365. All right, John, they're going to report on Tuesday, get workouts. They may actually even have a practice at some point.
Wow.
Because they haven't had one yet this year. If you don't go 11 on 11, it's not a practice to me.
Yeah.
The Eagles are in a good position in a lot of their starting spots, most significant playing time spots are decided. But there are a couple that have yet to be determined. How is Nick Sirianni going to go about deciding who gets those? And I don't want to leave his coordinators out of it. I certainly believe Gannon will dictate playing time on the defensive side of the ball. more so than on the offensive side of the ball. Are they going to have enough? Are those joint practices going to be the sole determinant of who is getting the time at the linebacker position for the Eagles? Out of the three safeties, veteran guys that they have, who's going to get more playing time? Are they going to be able to make that decision by the time game one rolls around?
I think that's going to go a long way. And I think a lot of those guys, we know the starters aren't going to play in the preseason games at all, but I think a lot of the guys who are in some of these positional battles for backup spots, backup tight end, the safety position, like you talked about a minute ago, some of the linebacker spots, they'll play in the preseason, and they're not going to play against other teams' top talent. But I think that'll give the coaching staff a good indication of who they want to go with, who they feel good about. And I got to believe that even if they're not in 11 on 11s, even if they're just doing 7 on 7s, or they're doing stuff on the side, that they're seeing something there. They're seeing enough there to be able to make a judgment on these players. They're only hurting themselves if they don't. And so I'm hoping the coaching staff has some way of being able to analyze these guys and make an informed decision on them, even without everybody playing in the preseason games and full pads on doing 2-a-days throughout the course of the summer. They were very healthy last year. The Eagles were. Again, this is another one of those things I'm willing to wait and see about, whether or not the reduced practices, the reduced contact during the course of the summer will be good for the team in the long run, whether it will allow them to analyze who they have and make decisions on that. And I do think there will be some opportunities there. Without knowing exactly how they're going about making their decisions with regards to practices this summer. Another thing where we're kind of just going to have to wait and see.
John, I mentioned the roster a little bit earlier, and you did for your latest at bleedinggreennation.com, so people should check that out. Ranking the Eagles position groups heading into training camp. One thing stuck out to me, and that was the defensive line. Now, safety last, I think we all agree with that. That's the biggest concern. Then I think it was quarterbacks right between safeties. So I think John's a little bit closer to me and long-term about Jalen Hurts. But defensive line, I look at this defensive line and say, that's a pretty good group. Now, there's some concerns with age and Brandon Graham coming back, but it's deep, it's talented. I was surprised you had it as low as you did. What's your thought process on the defensive line?
Yeah, for me, I think it was, how much is Hassan Reddick going to play as defensive end, and how much is he going to play at linebacker? And I think maybe it doesn't even really matter, because he's probably going to move back and forth between those two things. So maybe we look at it, maybe the best way to look at it is not defensive line and linebackers, but, front seven or, pass rushers or something like that. But as I was looking at positional groups, I was thinking of Reddick more as a linebacker as opposed to a defensive end. And if he's going to play mostly linebacker, you're looking at Brandon Graham on the outside, who, again, I'm thrilled he's back, and he was a big surprise with how well he played in 2021. You hope he comes back, but I was expecting a little more out of Josh Sweat last year, to be perfectly honest. He disappeared in big games against good teams, and I don't think he's established himself as a week in, week out reliable pass rusher. I think you saw that from the numbers and the lack of sacks this team had last year. Derek Barnett is still going to get a regular amount of snaps at defensive end, which does not inspire a whole lot of confidence in me. And I think the edges are where I have most of the concern. I think at defensive tackle, adding Jordan Davis is hopefully going to really help in the run game. And I think there's a lot there as far as being able to rush the passer too. He just wasn't asked to do that all that much in college. Javon Hargrave got off to a real fast start last year, but was quiet in the second half of the year and really did not match that production level. And we've seen that with him in his time in Philadelphia. He's kind of a streaky player in that regard. And I don't know what you've got in Fletcher Cox. Is he mostly cooked? But will a reduced role increase his effectiveness? If they don't need him to do as much, maybe he's a more effective player here in 2022. But I'm not sold on that idea. I think one of the big wild cards on the defensive line is Milton Williams. I liked what he was giving them at the end of the year. He seemed like he was an improving player. He's a flexible player, so you can play him at defensive tackle. You can play him on the edge a little bit. And so he's one guy that I do think could really add some, could help this positional group move up my rankings. But for me, this defensive line still has more question marks than they do answers. And that's why I ranked them as low as I did.
All right, since we've already gone right past the 2022 season where it comes to quarterback play.
It's only because of Kyler. I haven't gone past it, Jody.
Excuse me?
It's only because of the Kyler contract. I haven't gone past it.
Oh, okay. That sounds a lot like you already decided 2023.
I said they were going to make the playoffs.
Oh, okay. But who's their quarterback in 2023? It's the general manager mentality that we all have. We're always looking into the future. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Stolnis to do the same. Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, 2023 defensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. One's back. Both are back. Neither is back. If one is back, which of the two?
I think if one is back, it's Hargrave. He's the younger player. I think there were a lot of us who expected Cox to not be on the team this year. I think we were all surprised that the Eagles went and re-signed him. So I think this is Cox's last go around, and I hope there's a time where we honor him at the end of the year because I can't imagine unless he has a renaissance this year and gets 6 or 7 sacks that he's back on this team. So I think if one of the two are back, it's probably Hargrave. And I think if Hargrave has a productive season, he can get his contract restructured if there's a salary cap issue. That's one of the things we know Howie Roseman is great at, kicking more money down the road. But it would not surprise me at all if both leave after the season, if they decide they want to just cut their losses and move forward and make Milton Williams a starter and have Davis as their other starter. I think it's they'd like to invest money in the defensive tackle position, but at some point you also do have to throw some of that money on the outside. And so there's going to be a lot of needs on this defensive line once the season is over. I just don't see Cox as being here any more than this season. And I'm not expecting a big renaissance season from Fletcher Cox. I hope that he's productive in the limited role that he's going to have. I guess, frankly, I hope it is a more limited role. I hope he's not overexposed because what we saw last year was a guy who just looked like he didn't have a whole lot left in the tank. So I would say Hargrave next year over Cox for sure.
Yeah, that $14 million is something that you would think that means the Eagles are going to play him a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see how the playing time is sort of divvied out up front by Jonathan Gannon, because you're going to see a lot of odd and even man fronts. You're going to see a lot of multiple looks. You're going to see 5-man fronts, 4-man fronts, 3-man fronts. So it's going to be interesting to see how that playing time is sort of divvied out.
Yeah.
September 11th, because Jody's scolding me about going past this season. So I'm going to go to this season, John. September 11th in Detroit. Is Jalen Reagor on the field?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll say at this point he is. I think they're going to give him another shot as the punt returner. I think they would be silly to have him as one of their top 5 wideouts. I would take Greg Ward over him right now as the number 5, just for the reliability. I think Jalen Reagor last year really struggled as a punt returner. He was a net negative back there trying to field punts. If he can be better, if he can show this summer that he is better back there fielding punts, making decisions, and actually trying to, get the ball upfield. The Eagles were awful at that last year in special teams. They had one of the worst special teams units in football last season. So Rager's got to show that he can field punts, and he's probably going to have to be on punt coverage teams and get down the field and make a tackle or two here and there during the course of the season. I think Howie Roseman desperately wants to keep him on the roster and find a way for him to be productive. If he doesn't have to worry about as much with taking care of the wide receiver stuff, the weight of expectations of being the number 2 wide receiver, if he can focus a lot more of that energy on punt returns, on playing special teams, then maybe he becomes like a Desmond Howard type player for you, where he can.
That'd be nice.
It would be really nice, and we know what kind of a weapon that is when you have somebody back there who can break a game, who can shift field position like that with one return. So that's the hope. It's not a high hope, but I think at this point he's probably the best option for you back there, because they didn't go out this offseason and get somebody that has a track record of doing that.
Now, Britton Kobe, real quick, Jody, just one follow-up with John about Reagor, because, and I've said this as well, I think we've all said it. GMs don't want to give up on first-round picks in theory, but is it worse if Jalen's on the field as the 6th receiver and the punt returner, for Howie Roseman and he's covering kicks. Isn't that more of in other words, isn't that more of a microscope on, boy, he really missed out on this kid? Wouldn't it just be better to cut bait, give him a change of scenery for both sides if you're the GM?
I think there's a lot to say there. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if you're looking at what's best for Reagor, it certainly would be better for him to go someplace else. I don't know what kind of, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that there's a lot of coaching staffs around the league that are looking at him and thinking there's a diamond in the rough. There might be. And if there's a trade out there to be made, the Eagles should make it. I'll say that. I think if there's a way you can get, a 5th rounder, 6th rounder for Jalen Reagor and let him go try someplace else, I think that's fine. And if you do find somebody during the course of training camp that can return punts, then I say, let him go, release him, and let him try and latch on with another team. I think Howie Roseman's a little stubborn when it comes to a guy like Jalen Reagor, and without being able to get an asset in return, I don't think he's just going to cut him for the sake of cutting him.
All right, John, if I get you in trouble for this ahead of time, I'll apologize. But as you can see here on Birds 365, two hosts don't always necessarily have to agree. Your buddy, Brendan Lee Gouton, came out with his all-defensive team in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Some interesting selections. Some Eagles on there, some guys from the 3 other teams. His top 2 linebackers were, to no one's surprise, Micah Parsons, who is all-world with his rookie year with the Dallas Cowboys last year, and Kaiser White as the second-best linebacker in the NFC East this year. I don't think he's the second best linebacker on the Philadelphia Eagles. I would rank him 3rd on the Eagles behind Nakobe Dean and TJ Edwards. BLG's got him the second best linebacker in the division.
Yeah.
Are you near as high on Kaiser White as your buddy BLG is?
I think he's the second best linebacker on the team. Not in the division? No, I mean, I think, again.
Are you putting Nakobe Dean 3rd?
Yes, because I need to see it.
Well,
I need to see it.
You guys are going to eat so much crow on that one.
I would love it. And you know what? It'll taste good.
I can eat crow, yeah.
It'll taste good.
If Jalen Hurts is a first-team All-Pro, I'll happily eat crow and say I was wrong.
I mean, I think it was a steal getting him in the 3rd round, but I think we also, too, need to be careful about knowing that we got a 2nd-round pick or even a late 1st-round pick in the 3rd round, not making him to be better in his rookie season than I think we have a right to expect him to be. Do we know how much he's going to start, how much playing time he's going to get? Because if Reddick is going to be at one spot on the outside and White's going to be at the other side, you're going to have TJ Edwards playing a lot because they love him and his ability to play the middle. If they're playing 3-4, then sure, you're going to probably see a lot of him. But if you're playing 4-3 a lot of the time, he might not be getting more than 30 to 40% of the defensive snaps this season. So I think the future is really bright for him. As far as 2022 goes, I don't think I can put him ahead of Reddick and ahead of White, who are established guys. We know Reddick's going to play a ton, and I think White's going to play a ton because of his ability to cover guys. And so Nakobe Dean, love him, love his future, think it's great, but I'm pumping the brake a little bit on him in 2022, just until we can get a little bit more of a look at him.
Yeah, plus we got to see if he's healthy because the Eagles say he's healthy, but they didn't do anything in the spring. So we got to see, I'm going to feel a lot better about Nakobe Dean if we finally get to training camp, really day 5 of training camp. They have such a long ramp-up period now. And he's out there in 11 on 11s, and he's completely healthy, and he's ready to go. Otherwise, maybe it's a second half of the season type thing. Maybe he works his way in a little bit more slowly. It's not that I don't think he's going to be a good player. I think he's just going to have, as Jody knows, the startup cost. I like that term, like most rookies have. And that's not a bad thing. That's not an insult to a young 3rd round pick. And the good news is the Eagles have more depth at linebacker than they've had in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I'll even throw Davion Taylor in there because he can't stay healthy, but the Eagles like him. And he's very athletic. He's very physical. When he was out there, he seemed to start to be getting it as a raw prospect. When is the last time you've seen the Eagles have options at linebacker?
Yeah,
John.
It's really great. I mean, I think you might have to go back to the 2002, 3, 4 era where you had Trotter and you had Ike and you had oh gosh, I'm blanking on a couple of these guys now, but you had a good group there. And you go back to the Buddy Ryan days when you had Byron Evans and you had Seth Joyner and those guys. I mean, that's to me, that's when I think about the halcyon days of Eagles linebackers. That's what I go back to. I go back to that group where, you know, create the way they would blitz the quarterback, but be able to make plays in the middle of the field and get turnovers and scare the living daylights out of people. I think this unit has a chance to be as good as some of those Buddy Ryan linebacker units. And I love linebackers. I think it's my favorite position on the field on defense because you can do so much. You can blitz, you can play back. They make a ton of tackles. I think the Eagles have underrated the importance of linebackers and overrated how much importance the defensive line is supposed to have. I think it's swayed too much in one direction and over the other. And I'm glad there's now, it seems to be a little bit more of a balance right now. I think the linebacker group is much better than the defensive line group.
All right. With the risk of repeating myself, and that's pretty much exactly what I'm going to do. Your buddy BLG ranked the top 2 safeties in the NFC East. And he had Xavier McKinney of the Giants #1, and he really did have a pretty good year last year, and I think is only going to get better. So I like that selection. And his second safety is Jaquiski Tart of the Philadelphia Eagles. Much like at linebacker, I don't think he's the second best safety on the Eagles, let alone the second best safety in the NFC East. Are you on the Jaquiski Tart bandwagon?
It was an interesting pickup. I'm not. I think he's got a chance to start for this team. I mean, I think there's a reason they've been talking up Marcus Epps all offseason, and then they go out and they sign Tart. So I think he's a good player. I think he'll be a good player for this team. I think sometimes when there's a new guy, we can get overly excited about a new guy and pump him up a little bit more than maybe is worthy. I mean, Anthony Harris right now I would have over Tart for sure. I certainly think Tart's better than way better than Kevon Wallace. So I'm really disappointed in him as a player. I thought he was going to be good when they drafted him. Do we even know that Tart's going to start over Epps at this point? I mean, no, I think that's one of the training camp battles.
If I'm a betting man, I'm betting on if Jaquiski Tart does start, it will be for Anthony Harris. It will not be for Marcus Epps. I think the Eagles want to get Marcus Epps on the field. They want to get some youth and some. Now he might crap the bed in training camp and these joint practices, and that could change. But I think that's the plan to get some youth out there because Marcus can at least run and he can do some things. And he proved to be somewhat of a playmaker. And we'll see if 45% of the snaps can turn into 95% of the snaps and he can hold up. I think that's the hope. But also, John, you have to realize they tried to sign Marcus Williams.
Right.
And so I guess I'll leave it there with you and follow John at John Stolnis on Twitter. You can read him at Bleeding Green Nation. Read him at The Good Fight for your Phillies news as they make a run towards the playoffs. When it comes to Jesse Bates, there's a lot of talk. The Eagles don't have the room for him right now. But a lot of fans, you know how fans are. They want to give everything they don't like to Cincinnati for everything they do like. So they want to send Andre Dillard and Reagor and Barnett.
It's a package. It's a package deal. Everybody loves a good package deal.
Yeah.
I'll put Jaquiski Tart in despite the fact that Brandon Lee Gowton's got him second best safety in the NFC East.
That's right.
Any chance Jesse Bates in Philadelphia?
I think you laid out the reasons why that the chances are probably better not that he would come to Philadelphia than they are that he would come to Philadelphia. Everybody looks at Howie Roseman loving to make trades and thinking, oh, okay, well, he loves to make trades, loves to make a splash. And that's all true. He does love to do that. But I do think they went out and they got Tart for a reason. And I think that I don't think that they feel like they have to spend big money in every single position group. And so I think they look at their trio of cornerbacks and they feel good about the coverage that they're going to get from those guys. And so they maybe don't need to go out and get Jesse Bates. I don't really feel a pressing need to go out and get him. I would like to see what Hart and Epps have to do. If they get him, great. You've got to make some room on the roster, and I think they need to clear some cap room too, if I'm not mistaken. So so they'd have to make a couple of they'd have to subtract from someplace in order to make that happen. And Andre Dillard has some value, so maybe you can move him and clear some space there. I don't know how much space you get. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's probably a move to be made there. But you're right. You're not trading a bunch of your flotsam to the Bengals in order to bring in a guy who, is on the franchise tag. And then you got to sign him long term.
Yeah.
And so,
which you can't do, by the way. You can't do until next year. So,
right. So I don't see it. I'll be happy if it happens, but yeah, I think the odds are better than not it doesn't.
All right, John, last one from me, and you should check out John's podcast, Eye on the Enemy. You Bird fans out there will enjoy it greatly. All right, we're going to have you on again before the season starts, so I might have to repeat this question, but I'm going to ask it today anyway.
All right.
Week 1 at the Detroit Lions. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, and I like the Lions this year. I think they're going to be improved. I think it's a good place for them to start, though. I think it might take a little while for the Lions to kind of get their feet under them, to kind of, know what they have. I mean, I think it could be a situation. Jared Goff is still the starter there, right? I mean, so I think that could be a good opening week for the Eagles defense to pin their ears back and go after a guy who has slipped big time since that Super Bowl season. And I think it might take the Lions just a little bit of time to find themselves. So for me, I think that's a good spot for them. I would rather them go in there than say start off the season in Tampa or start off the season even in Dallas or something like that. Against a Detroit team that I think will be improved, but not one of the upper echelon teams in the NFC.
Johnny, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on. And did your phone ring with BLG getting on your case?
No, we'll talk. We'll talk in the Slack channel a little later, I'm sure.
I put you in a tough spot.
By the way, did Landon Collins get signed? I didn't even know Landon Collins was signed. Yeah, BLG had Landon Collins as the honorable mention at safety. I thought he was out. I thought he was a free agent. I could be wrong.
I think isn't he still a free agent? Yeah, I don't think he's signed.
I think so. Yell at BLG for that too.
Feel free to give him a hard time.
Yeah, you bet.
Johnny, good stuff. Thanks, buddy, and we will get you back on a couple weeks down the road.
You bet. Always a pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
John Stolnis here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. Good one next hour as well. Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly. They had the final #1 entry to their 25 most important Eagles. A little different than what John and Eddie Kratz did on SI, which was the best football players, top 25 best football players. They went importance on NBC Sports Philly. That's something we'll discuss with Dave Zangaro. Still 20 minutes away. Don't even think about touching that dial here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Hour number 2 of Birds 365 on a Football Friday with your Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. Thank John Stolnis for hopping on board. I'm sorry to put him in a weird position with BLG coming up.
BLG's a friend. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't.
BLG is whack. Now, wait a minute. He's a friend of mine. He's been loyal to me. He's come here on with us on Birds 365. He comes on WIP. Whenever I ask him, he's like one of my favorite people on the planet. The hell is he thinking about? Jaquiski Tart as the second best safety in the NFC East?
He doesn't like the safeties in the NFC East. His honorable mention.
What's wrong with Epsy?
What? Yeah, I'm with you. Well, all right, I'm going to defend BLG. Tart has started a lot of games in this league. I think it was 63 with a really good defense, by the way. In San Francisco, at least at times. He's a lot more proven than Marcus Epps. Marcus Epps is mainly projection. Like J-Ron Curse had a good year. He had him as an honorable mention with Dallas last season. Yeah, I do think age comes into it with Jaquiski Tart. It is what it is contract-wise. San Francisco gives him the better minimum. He's got a chance to make a little bit more this year. I mean, the league is telling you what they think about Jaquiski Tart. Yeah, I mean, but from a proven standpoint, he's proven more than those guys. So I guess that's the route BLG took. That's my guess. Obviously, I can only speculate. I guess he's going with the proven option.
Okay.
But then, Blake Martinez with the Giants. I mean, that's a good football player. Yeah.
He's like one of the leading tackling
now
guys
he's coming
in
off
the
an injury.
NFL
coming off an injury.
Years.
Yeah, but he's a really good player. Really good player, linebacker. If he's healthy, and we'll see how he bounces back. So, everybody's got their opinion.
And he's got Kaiser White in front of your guy, TJ Edwards, who you say is the most underrated player on the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their opinions, Jody. I got mine. People aren't liking them today. TJ,
most of the time I love BLGs. I think he's whack today.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't agree with those opinions, but I understand the proven nature of going Jaquiski Tart over Marcus Epps, at least.
Well, but if you're going proven nature, you got to put Blake Martinez at it, Kaiser White. So he goes back and forth between the two stances. All right, we'll get BLG on next week and let him attempt to defend himself. All right, we've been talking a lot about quarterbacks, and with the new signing of Kyler Murray of the Cardinals, just looking at where Jalen Hurts is going to fill in on how much it's going to cost, if the Eagles are going to commit to him going forward as their next quarterback. Can't do anything till after the year's over, but if we're projecting a little bit, and John is scared spitless that the money...
I got a dog. I'm not scared, but
okay.
I'm trying to... I'll try to say it this way, Jody. I'm trying to think of a path where I would pay Jalen Hurts $35 million, and I can't find that path. That's my concern. That's my personal concern. I'm not saying the Eagles aren't open-minded. I'm not saying they've made a decision, although I think they've shown their leanings by, snipping around Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. I think they understand they have to get better. I think they'll be in a very similar situation next year as they were this year. They will try to get better. Maybe they can't get better, and maybe Jalen Hurts is back. But I'm trying to find the path. I say the same thing with Miles Sanders in a contract extension when I say that. Like, how does he get a contract extension? How do you get Jalen Hurts to be worth $35 million? I can't. We just talked, John Stolnis. We're talking the Lions, right? Jared Goff made the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo made a Super Bowl, almost got back to a second Super Bowl. I'm not saying you can't be successful and make a Super Bowl, but I don't want to pay those guys either. And I think I'm right on that one. I think everyone would agree with me that they don't want to pay Jimmy Garoppolo and they don't want to pay Jared Goff. And I think if you do, and teams did, they're making mistakes. How do you get a path to $35 million? Forget about 45. I mean, that ain't happening. 35, Kirk Cousins range. How do you get there? I can't get there, Jody.
Fair enough. All right. So let me see if I can characterize your position. If you'll sign off on this, if this is the way I would characterize what you've been saying as of today. The Eagles right now, and it can surely change, but right now, as we sit here today, you believe they're in an untenable position. Could you use that word to describe it?
I would say they're in a very, very difficult position. Is it untenable? No, nothing's untenable. They proved that with Carson Wentz. You can just eat money but yes, it's very difficult.
If you want to use the word difficult, if that fits better in your eyes, they're your word. So I'm going to let you choose whatever word you want. Difficult works for me. Who's to blame?
They misevaluated Carson Wentz. When you misevaluate at the quarterback position, it has a devastating effect because they've already been in it. The numbers have only gone up. Now Carson Wentz's extension looks quaint now. At the time, it was the most money ever given to an NFL player. That's how quickly things go up and up and up. At the time, in fact, I remember when he signed the extension and people were going nuts about that. I said, this is going to be a really, really cost-effective deal very, very quickly. And it turned out to be right. However, the player failed.
Right.
So it doesn't matter.
No, so that means it turned out to be wrong.
Yes.
Your position of it could be cost-effective was right. Then you have the result.
Yes.
And you say whether it was or wasn't cost-effective. No, it was costly.
No.
It was $33 million dead cap hit costly.
Which is what I said. When you misevaluate players, that's where the mistake comes in. If they didn't misevaluate Carson Wentz and he turned into what they thought he was going to be, everything would be hunky-dory. Everything would be great. But they misevaluated the player. So once you do that, they went all in. They put all their eggs in the Carson Wentz basket. People don't realize that. There's revisionist history since because of what went down. No, the Eagles didn't plan on Jalen Hurts starting. They never wanted Jalen Hurts to be a starter. They drafted him to be a cost-effective backup for 4 years, and then they were going to do the old Eagles magic and try to spin him off for a second round or hopefully a first round pick if he played well in the preseason or he played well in the game here or the game there. But they were forced to play him and throw him in. So the crux of the entire issue goes back to misevaluating Carson Wentz. And it's a perfect example, but people are living in it. Like 10 years from now, Jody, we'll still be doing Birds 365, and we'll look back at this entire thing and say, wow, that really screwed up the Eagles for this time, and they're trying to get back to where they think they have a franchise quarterback.
All right.
They're not there yet.
I guess I need to tighten up my question. because you answered it, but you didn't answer it the way I wanted you to.
I rarely do.
I asked you who's to blame.
Who's to blame
I need
for
to put a
misevaluating?
comma individually, comma into my question. It's the overall Eagle organization. You're right. The way you answered it was perfectly fine. I didn't ask the question correctly. Who is the number one individual to blame for the Philadelphia Eagles being in the quarterback position / conundrum that they're in right now?
I personally think it's Carson Wentz, but you have to give it to Howie Roseman from a fan's perspective. It's Howie's job. I think Carson Wentz to me is to blame because he stopped doing what he was doing that made him successful. He came in as a very raw player. He had a taskmaster as a position coach in John DiFilippo, who he did not like, but John was a hard ass and he forced him to get his mechanics better. And he went out and worked with Tom House and Adam Dadu. Same thing Jalen Hurts did this year. And he got better. And that was before the Super Bowl season. And then he stopped doing it. Now, partially because of injuries. Originally, when he had a number of injuries, then the pandemic hit. And then his mechanics scaled back. But, I mean, ultimately, the Eagles have to see what's going on. So, ultimately, they have to make that decision, say this is not going in a positive direction. So, I mean, Howie Roseman is to blame. He's always to blame. I mean, if a player, it's his watch. So, I mean, he misevaluated the player. The organization misevaluated the player, and that's Howie Roseman first and foremost.
All right, this will not be popular, but I'll give you my three guys in reverse order. Number 3 would be Carson Wentz. You just can't discount the injuries. Do I think Carson Wentz showed his true character here over time when the going got tough? Carson got the hell out of Dodge. I don't like Carson Wentz a little bit. But when we're talking about what transpired over time here with the Philadelphia, you can't take the injuries out of it. It's the number one, I think, reason that things went badly here in Philadelphia. And he got the injuries trying to make plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. It wasn't like he got bit by a shark surfing when he should have been working out during the offseason to try and get better. No, he got hurt on the field to play for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's not his fault. So that's why I would put him no higher than number 3. Number 2 is Howie Roseman. He moved up to get Carson. He, in collusion with Jeff Lurie, decided to make him the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League, and they misevaluated the player. So Howie's got to be, there's a big different distance for me between Carson and Howie Roseman. Number 1 is Doug Peterson, because I think Doug Peterson should have pulled the plug on Carson Wentz, and I don't even know if he would have had the gravitas to do that, but I'm assuming he did. So let me ask you a question and I'll finish my rundown. When Carson Wentz was replaced, that fateful night against the Green Bay Packers, do you think Doug, in game, it had to be Doug's call when he made the decision to start Jalen Hurts the next week? Do you think that was all Doug's call? Do you think Doug had to ask permission to do it and wouldn't have done it if Howie Roseman / Jeff Lurie didn't sign off on it? Do you think Howie and Jeff had a call waiting for Doug when he showed up at his office on Monday morning and said, please come to the office, and they dictated terms? How do you think that went down when Carson Wentz was replaced by Jalen?
They always call them, and they always had those meetings. Well, they were a little bit overblown. Jeffrey Lurie would have his Tuesday meeting with Doug Peterson. So I'm sure the questions were asked, but no, it was Doug's decision. And he probably stayed a little bit too long with Carson. He was very loyal to him. Which is ironic because Carson stopped talking to him. But, yeah, he stuck with him longer than he should have. But, when you're the head coach and you've had success with that type of quarterback, and understand, Jalen was a rookie and Jalen wasn't prepared, as you saw at the end of that season. So it wasn't like it was going to get better, just throwing a young quarterback into that disaster of a team. But the Eagles had to do it. He benched himself, but Doug didn't want to bench him. I don't blame Doug. I just don't. I mean,
yeah, I do.
Because
if he had pulled the plug earlier, we would have gotten more of a look at Jalen Hurts, and we would have had a better read going into last season. And maybe the Eagles are more motivated. Maybe they are more driven to get another quarterback or to go in another direction if Jalen Hurts isn't good enough. Or maybe Jalen Hurts would have benefited from playing more the previous season and been better this year, and we feel better about him. It's on Dougie P. He's the number one reason that the Eagles are in the untenable
position.
But
I don't think it was that close at the time. People, again, I think there's a lot of revisionist history. I mean, it was like Carson and Jalen, was down here. There wasn't even a thought of that Jalen Hurts could potentially play. Now, Carson took it the wrong way, but from the organization standpoint, there was never, they just got him because Carson was always hurt. That's it. And they would need somebody to throw in there with some talent if they had to win a playoff game, not a 42-year-old guy with a torn hamstring. I mean, that's why they brought him in. So it was never really that close. And, as a head coach, you're trying to right the ship with the guy you think is going to be the long-term quarterback. And Doug's assuming he's going to be the coach. And Doug's assuming you're going to get out of that terrible season. And Carson Wentz is going to recover and bounce back. That was the plan. That was the thought process. And, that's why I blame Carson more than Doug. But, Doug paid with his job. So
right. But you remember how bad Carson was in 2020.
Oh, yeah. He was the worst starting quarterback in the NFL.
And that's the reason why I'm going to put it on the coach could have pulled the plug earlier on Carson Wentz than he did. And this is, of course, all speculation as to what Jalen Hurts would or wouldn't have done, how the minds of the organization may have changed. But I would have liked to have seen more of it, Jalen, in 2020 hindsight, which is always a beautiful, perfect thing. I would have liked to have seen more Jalen Hurts, because we also know in 2020 hindsight, Carson Wentz was not only not going to continue here, he was not going to be able to cut it with the Indianapolis Colts, and he'll return to do a solid for the Philadelphia Eagles this year when he doesn't take the Washington Commanders.
Who do we have on? Somebody, Jeff Mosher, yesterday said Carson's got more talent than Jalen Hurts. So if it clicks, there's another guy. So when everybody's yelling at me, yell at Mosher, yell at Stolnis, by the way. John's playing politician, and he ranked, as I said, the Eagles' positions. He's got safety last. Who's second to last? Quarterbacks. And it's not Gardner. Gardner's a good backup.
It's second to last just in the division.
No, he's ranking the Eagles' positional rankings. So offensive line is first. So he's ranking the groups on the Eagles, and offensive line was first, safety was last, second to last was quarterbacks because of.
Would you not agree with that?
Oh no, I agree with it.
Yeah.
But everybody seems to be getting mad at me for pointing out that
you have to comp the group to the rest of the National Football League. And
no, the groups, he's comping the groups of the Eagles. In other words, offensive line is the strongest position on the Eagles. And then comes, I think he had
right. But how do you come to that's their best group? By comparing the Eagles to other teams' offensive lines.
Oh, well, sure, that's part of it. But they're really talented on the offensive line. They're not really talented at quarterback. They're not really talented at safety. That's my point. Now, they got a good backup quarterback. If you were just comping backup quarterbacks to the rest of the league, Gardner Minshew would probably be top 5, top 10 at worst. I would argue top 5 as a backup quarterback. So he's not the one bringing you down when you're talking about a positional group. Maybe Carson Strong is as a third string quarterback, but I don't know where this sort of hemming and hawing is that this player is not a $35 million a year player. I don't know where that path is, Jody. That's what I'm trying to find. Yeah, I can't find that path.
I don't think backup quarterback moves the needle. I would tell you Chad Henne sucks, but I'm still going to put the Kansas City Chiefs in my top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league because they've got a guy named Mahomes.
Well, that's
who you have to believe is going to play
Jody.
95% of the snaps.
But that's my point. He's dragging it down. That's exactly my point. Nobody's paying attention that the backup quarterback is top 5. That's exactly my point. That's why that Jalen is dragging the position down, not Gardner. That's my point.
See, now you're a glass half empty guy. I'm going to be a glass half full guy. That's how good the rest of the Eagles roster is. That it is pushed their quarterback down to the second position group, which, by the way, we're talking about 6 groups here. Is that it? So out of the 6, it's number 5. It's not like we're talking 27.
Well, we got
D-line, O-line, linebackers.
We got quarterbacks, running backs, receivers.
Oh, they split
line,
cornerbacks and safeties?
Yeah, defensive line, corner, safety.
All right, then there's a couple different groups. Yeah. Would you put quarterback behind running back?
Yes. Miles is a good player. Not great, but he's a good player. He's a good player. I think I've gone on this pendulum, and we got to get Dave. We got to get a break. We got to get Dave's in the green room.
Yes.
I think Miles has gone from overrated to underrated. Well, amongst the Eagles fans.
Fair enough. Do me a favor. If you have it handy, I don't know if you have it handy, the Madden ratings. Where does Sanders rank? Where does Hurts rank?
Well, I definitely don't have those handy because I could
Maybe we'll ask Zangaro. He's in the waiting room, so he's going to pop up next. He's probably got him handy. He's Dave Zangaro. He knows his shit.
Yeah.
All right. Jody McDonald, John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. Quick timeout. We'll come back, talk to Dave Zangaro of NBC Sports Philly.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really. Don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake him out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
John McMullen, Jonah McDonald, on Bird 365, joined by our buddy Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly, who I saw on my TV this morning as I was getting ready for Birds 365, watching him put his number one atop his list.
Number one.
Philadelphia Eagles. No great shock that Jalen Hurts is the guy, because the quarterback is the guy pretty much with 32 of 32 teams around the National Football League. When you started your list, Dave, and it was very well done, by the way, thank you very much for sharing with all of us. Do you just write Jalen Hurts in and then figure everybody else out?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's going to be the quarterback on. Yeah, maybe if you're the Tennessee Titans, you can say, all right, Derrick Henry gets that top spot. But there aren't many teams where it's not going to be the quarterback. I'm trying to think around the league. You could argue Aaron Donald in LA.
Still the quarterback.
Really it's the quarterback. And Jalen's the most fascinating storyline of this team, because you look around him and the roster on paper looks pretty good, but so much of it just comes down to whether or not he takes a step forward and how big that step's going to be. And I'm excited to find out.
So number one is number one, and he should be, Dave, on a list of most important Eagles. So I've gotten myself in trouble, as I usually do this morning. Boy, I saw that Kyler Murray contract, and I just went, oh, my God. I mean, look, there's still time. I mean, Jalen's not even eligible for an extension yet until after the season. But I try to think in my mind of a path how he gets. If he plays like he did last season, we're not talking Kyler Murray money, but we're talking $35, $40 million, and it's only going up.
Yeah, the quarterback contracts have just gotten out of hand. And in our minds, I still think like the fan base in NFL in general hasn't like caught up with where these contracts are, because you think about like, all right, what's the top quarterback making? I think everyone goes, 25 mil, right? No, right now there's 3 quarterbacks in the 20s. There's 5 quarterbacks in the 30s. With Kyler now, there are 8 quarterbacks getting over $40 million a year. So, I think he's clearly going to be in the 30s, even if he doesn't improve. If he plays the season he had last year. Yeah. Because we figure Kyler's I don't think Kyler's a top 10 quarterback. He's probably.
Neither do I. I think he's really good, but that's the one. And I said that one startled me. That one shook me. And I'm like, well, he's good. Jalen's probably not going to be as good as him. And he's not good enough.
Teams so like you look at the Cardinals and they're in this spot where they have a good young quarterback. He's not great. And they're kind of forced to pay for projection. That's a scary place to be, because say Kyler doesn't put himself in that elite tier and you're paying him elite money, it really hamstrings you. But if you're the Cardinals, you can't like move on from him. So you got to pay that guy.
That's why I told Jody, I said, you have to pay him. But
the Eagles aren't in that situation yet.
Yeah.
But if Jalen really takes a step forward this year, they're going to be in that situation where they're going to say, all right, we have this young guy. Are we willing to throw it away to start over? It just adds another layer to the biggest question surrounding this team. And he's going to get paid. He just is. That's the way this league works.
No,
whether it deserves it or not.
Dave, let me run this one by, and it's probably not a fair question, but I'm real good at asking unfair questions. Understood that in making a determination, Jalen Hurts, has he improved? And if so, how much is in beauty in the eye of the beholder? But in this analytical sports world in which we live now, everybody wants some number to tie something to defend that decision that he is this guy, he is improved. No, he's not the guy. We're not going down that road. We're listening to John McMullen. We're already doing the tape work on the draftable quarterbacks in the first round for next year. What's the category? I know there are 12 categories that you can look at, but what's the top one? What is the one that Dave Zangaro will zero in on and say, I need to see improvement in this category? He has to go from point A to point B in this category. Not hard and fast, but what category do you put? What does he have to show first?
Yeah, I don't think sometimes the number can be a little misleading, but it's accuracy. And it's not just, what was he, 61.3 last year? It's not just saying, all right, he has to be 65%. I don't think that's giving credit to what that category means enough. But I think that number has to improve, but it also, like, accuracy to me doesn't just mean completing a pass. If there's a 10-yard slant, he has to hit the receiver in stride. You throw the ball behind the receiver, he might catch it. It might be a 9-yard gain. You throw him open a little bit and you throw with anticipation, it becomes a 25-yard gain. That's how you win and lose games in this league at that position. So accuracy is the most important thing he needs to improve. And I don't think the numbers themselves will bear that out, but they'll help us kind of understand the framework of whether or not he's improved there, if that makes sense. But accuracy to me is the one area every quarterback needs to get better at. If there's even if you're 80%, you want it to be at 85. You just want to improve that accuracy, and the numbers don't always bear that out. But he has some other areas to improve, but that will be at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, Nick says he's got those 4 traits he evaluates with quarterbacks: accuracy, decision-making, arm strength, and then movement skills. They check the box, obviously, with movement skills, and then check the box with arm strength, even though some people still don't agree. The Eagles.
So I think so. Let me. I think the accuracy, and I'm putting it under the accuracy umbrella, the throwing with anticipation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I think
too late at times.
Yeah. I think he has the arm strength, but sometimes it looks like he doesn't because the ball's a half second late.
Yeah.
And that can mean a world of difference.
Yeah. Especially on the deep ball. Yeah. He's often, and I think one of his, and that comes to decision making as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of times he doesn't trust what he sees at this point of his career. And that's why you see those passing charts. And I always joke they could be sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts because they got the big hole in the middle. He never throws the ball in the middle of the field. So all this stuff has to improve. And it might improve. It can improve. It probably will improve. Soft schedule. So let's talk about the coaching staff, the guys who got to get Jalen Hurts and got to improve. Dave, same group, which is, I think, the continuity is a positive. Change in play caller. Do we overrate that as media, as fans, when it comes to play calling, or is it because Nick was very, this is my offense. If Dave Zangaro calls the plays, it's going to be the exact same if I call the plays. That's how the attention to detail is. Do we overrate that kind of play calling stuff? I see it rolling in your eyes.
I don't know where we are now because I think it's kind of been a roller coaster of how we rate that specific job duty. I think in the beginning when you hear Shane Steichen calling the plays, everyone goes, "Oh, he's calling the plays. What's going on?" And then Nick tries to say, "Well, Nick plays it off like it almost means nothing," which isn't true either. I mean, it certainly matters who's picking which individual play gets called into the quarterback. I think it's somewhere in between there, right? Because Nick does have a good point. Like, if they are in lockstep as much as he says they are, then a lot of the work is done during the week. It's done in situational preparedness, like knowing, all right, if we're in a backed up situation, it's 3rd and 3, whatever the exact situation is, then the menu gets a lot shorter, right? You're basically picking from these X amount of plays instead of the whole playbook in that situation. But it absolutely matters who's calling the plays in. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't have made the change, right? So in his attempt to kind of minimize that role, you can't lose sight of the fact that they did it for a reason.
Yeah.
And I don't think the reason was Nick wanting to have more time with his defense. I think that was a byproduct of it. Like all these other things he has to handle, he gets the time for. That's a byproduct. The reason they made the switch was because they thought they weren't being effective enough on offense. You don't make that switch for another reason if it's working. You know, they made the switch because they thought we can get more out of the offense with Shane calling the plays, and that's why they did it. So long-winded way of saying I don't know where people rate it to call it underrated or overrated, but it's probably in the middle of those two.
All right, and what does it say about the relationship between Sirianni and Steichen that X amount of games, probably 6 or 7, I don't know the exact moment that the light bulb went over Coach Sirianni's head and said, oh, shoot, I'm not doing a good enough job here. I got to get somebody else to do this for me. But you got to have some pretty good faith in the guy you're handing that responsibility off to, don't you? One quarter into the first year you're ever a head coach in the NFL going, all right, I can't get this done here. Take this.
Yeah, especially because when the Eagles hired him, they expected him to call plays. So I do give him a ton of credit, Nick Sirianni, for not having an ego get in the way, because this is such an ego-driven business. And I don't want to like make it seem like I'm ragging on Doug Peterson. He would no chance he ever gives up play calling. He loves it too much, and he believes he can call the best games. So I give Nick Sirianni a ton of credit for realizing that it wasn't working and making that switch, because I really don't think a lot of coaches would do it, especially not a lot of young coaches.
Yeah.
Like, he's a rookie coach who was already in a situation where people didn't believe in him. There was literally one team that wanted to hire him, and they hired him. It's not like he had other opportunities. It's not like he was Andy Reid giving it over to Marty Mornhinweg in year 10. You know, he's not established. So it makes it even more impressive to me that he said, all right, this isn't working. We got to try to do what's best for the team. I actually asked him about the ego part of it, and he said, you know, it can't play a role. It just can if we're going to be successful. So I give him credit. I don't know what it means long term, because they hired this guy
that's
as the offensive coach, and they expected him to call plays. And I don't know, like, how long is the leash on Shane Steichen if it doesn't work?
Yeah, because the expectations, Dave, are through the roof now. So, you know, long term, as you mentioned, the Eagles hired him to call the plays. They will use that against him in the future if things come off the rails. I mean, I give Nick Sirianni a lot of credit. Jody knows I'm a big fan of CEO coaches. I never understood sort of the super offensive coordinator. If you're the head coach, you know, get involved. If there's a problem on defense, special teams, get involved. You're the head coach. So I give him a lot of credit for being a young coach, as you said, to be able to do that. But we know Jeffrey Lurie, you know.
What's Graham Harrell up to these days?
Exactly. If you know, you had a Super Bowl winning coach, and, you know, he loses Frank and John, they get better jobs. But the expectations were there. The Eagles were going in trying to win. All of a sudden, you know, you got a scapegoat. Give me Mike Groh. Give me Press Taylor. This, that. Give me Carson Walsh. The expectations create a different environment. And if the Eagles don't live up to them, will they be looking for the scapegoats again?
Yeah, I mean, it's, first off, you mentioned it earlier, John, but them bringing back the same staff, even when you have a successful year, is just so rare.
It's very rare.
Extremely rare. So, if they have a bad season, people are going to get fired. That's just, that's the way it works. I mean, someone, at least the position coach level, will be out, probably a few people. It'll depend on it. There's a chance Jalen Hurts could end up being a scapegoat if he doesn't play well. And they say, oh, we got to get a new quarterback. There are a lot of different scenarios. Things would have to really unravel for it to be the head coach, I think.
No, but the clock would start, don't you think?
Yeah, sure. Well, honestly, the clock starts the minute they get hired in a lot of ways.
Well, you get a little honeymoon. They weren't going to fire him. Some people talked about it, though, at 2-5.
People asking if he was one and done. There were questions about it because there was a moment where you thought, is he a little overwhelmed by this?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a crazy question to ask at the time. He wasn't, we saw that obviously. And he, with the way they finished last year, he bought himself time. But there's only so much time in this league, the way it runs, and professional sports now, the way everything runs. So the expectations change a lot. They just do. And it makes it a lot tougher. They're not surprising anyone this year. They're just not.
Dave, I've already misquoted my partner, John McMullen, a couple times today, and he's corrected me. So he'll probably have to do so again because I'm going to speak for him again. You put 3 linebackers on your top 25 list. At number 23, TJ Edwards. At number 17, Kazir White. And at number 15, Nakobe Dean. Now, basically, I know John and I are both going to disagree with you on this, but probably John more so than me. I got no problems or issues with you putting Nakobe Dean number 1, as would I if I had made up the list the same way. Trying to judge and read the way that you did it, I think I understand the way you did it, and I agree with the fact that Nakobe Dean could be that important to the Eagles this year. Why Kaiser White over TJ Edwards? Is it because you think Nakobe Dean is going to take Edwards off the field more than Kaiser White? Because I would have Edwards 2 and Kaiser White 3 out of those in the order that you put them in. I know John would have a different order than you do. Why'd you put the linebackers in the order you put them?
Yeah, first off, I really like TJ. It wasn't a knock on him, but the way I looked at it is I think the evolution here is going to be that Nakobe ends up being the top linebacker, and they're going to play him at both Mike and Will. And this is kind of the way I see it going. I think when he's in the middle, they'll have Kaiser White as the weak side linebacker. And when they're in kind of more run stuff situations, they'll have TJ Edwards as the middle linebacker. They'll have Nakobe Dean as the weak side. And the reason I think they kind of want to have one consistent linebacker is so that you can have the green dot and get the play calls in. And I know that's a lot to ask of a rookie when you're looking at Nakobe Dean to say, all right, here's the green dot. You got to play 2 positions. You got to kind of be one of the leaders of the defense. But I think he's probably up for it, and we'll find out if he's not. I think that would be a surprise to me, given everything we've learned about him, both before he got here and since he's been here. And I just think they'll be in situations more where the 2 linebackers on the field will be to stop the pass. You'll have Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White out there as opposed to TJ and Nakobe. But I still think TJ is going to play a pretty big role in this defense. He's earned that, honestly, based on the way he played last year.
People kind of forget about Davion Taylor because for the first time in years, the Eagles have depth at linebacker. As you just mentioned, I get the sneaking feeling the Eagles like Davion Taylor more than people realize. Now, he's been hurt a lot, but when he was on the field last year, Dave, he showed he was starting to catch on. Obviously, he's very raw. He's very physical. I thought he showed that. Obviously, he's a great athlete. Am I misreading that? Are people dismissing Davion Taylor a little bit too much at this point?
It's funny. I just this morning, my 10 defensive players I want to watch in training camp story went up, and he was one of them. And you're right. He has kind of been forgotten. It was just such a shame he got hurt last year because there's no one who could have used those reps more than Davion. And it was frustrating because you saw him start to get it a little bit. He was in the right spot all of a sudden. He was using his speed, but he was going the right way, which is always what you want to do. I think I might have told you guys, I had a joke that for a while, Davion was their fastest linebacker to the wrong spot. But, he started to get it a little bit last year, and the playing time was showing it. Like he was almost there. But now he is buried a little bit. I don't know. I guess the guy they take off the field is Kaiser White. And you can play him at that will spot. But
so we have that history and Kaiser got a little bit more money than the LJ Fords of the world and the Corey Nelsons and the Paul Warlows. So I don't think he's going to get cut. But we've been through this before when the Eagles bring in this 1-year linebacker and he's going to be part of the defense, and all of a sudden it goes in a really negative direction.
Yeah.
Any chance of that, or is Kaiser too good for that?
The one thing that makes me question it a little bit is why the Chargers didn't re-sign him.
Yeah.
The Chargers are a team that they're going for it. Like they are all in. He didn't get that much money. He had 144 tackles last year. Brandon Staley says he loves him, and you're like, well, you couldn't pony up $2 million to keep this guy. It seems a little confusing to me. But we also know Brandon Staley and Jonathan Gannon are close. So if there was some giant red flag, I don't know if the Eagles would have signed him. In the back of your mind, it's there because you mentioned the list and you had Eric Wilson to it last year.
Yeah.
And it's a list of like guys you had heard of and you thought maybe they'll come here and be okay. And they weren't. They were all pretty awful. Give Paul Warlow a pass. He got hurt.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, just Zach Brown too. Add him to the list.
Stephen Tulloch, where they throw him on the fire.
Stephen Tulloch lasted. Natural leverage. That was what Jim Schwartz used to say, and I stole that line for myself. I'm not short. I have natural leverage. In the back of my mind, it's there, but I think Kaiser is a better player than those guys. We'll see. There's a fear there. The good news is they didn't spend a ton to get him, so it's not like they broke the bank for this guy, and if he doesn't work out,
well, that's part of it. They can move on pretty easily. That's part of it as well. So
we'll see. I still think he's going to be ahead of Davion at that spot, but I think in training camp we'll see some mixing and matching at linebacker a lot. I mean, they did it last year too. Before they locked in on the starters, they were really kind of using every different combination, and I'd imagine they're going to do that again this year.
I think Davion Taylor will actually depict how much Kaiser White plays more than Kaiser White. If Davion is up to the challenge and that good and stays healthy and is a third-round draft pick as compared to a somewhat on the cheap free agent signing, that might move the needle for the Eagles. All right, I do want to ask you this. We were talking about right before we punched you up. If you're ranking the Eagles against the other 31 teams positionally around the National Football League, are their quarterbacks ranked higher or are their running backs ranked higher? You're comparing the Birds to the 31 other teams and whoever populates those two positions, those groups. Where do the Eagles rank higher, at quarterback or running back?
I heard some of that conversation. It's tough because the quarterback group, like, how do you even include Gardner? Because he might not play. Whereas, like, the running backs,
the little 5% that he does get. That's what backup quarterbacks count for 5 out of 100%.
He's a good backup, though.
He's a very good backup. Yeah. But the problem is, like, all the running backs are going to play.
Yeah.
Or at least those three are going to play at some point. I like Kenny Gainwell, too. He's kind of been – he was the one guy when I did my top 25 most important that I wish I had a spot for. Because I like him, and I think he has a role in this team. I just couldn't find a spot for him. They're probably pretty close. I'd probably give – really it comes down to Jalen. I think Jalen's like a high teens quarterback. You're talking like 17 to 20 in the league.
20. That's a good spot.
So maybe I think Miles is probably around there too.
I know.
The average is great, but he can't stay healthy. The other guy's probably I'll go running back, but by a hair. Because I think the other guys.
Madden put Jalen at 24. If you're going with the Madden rankings,
no.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't give a flying. You know what
about Madden rankings guy?
Yeah, I don't think any players are. Which they get way too upset about.
It's fun though. They play the game and then they see them.
Hassan Reddick got real fired up. He lost 3 points. He
lost 3 points. Wow.
Yeah.
He only had a good year last year.
Yeah. He went from 12.5 to 11. It's very scientific. So he lost 3 points.
Well, he did. Well, I will say 2 years ago we had 6 forced fumbles. He only had 2 last year.
That's true. That could have played into it as well.
I don't know if Madden's going that deep. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, I think they get they expense a Pro Football Focus subscription, move a couple names around.
It doesn't matter, so might as well.
It doesn't matter. Safety. I'll leave it there. Dave Zangaro, D Zangaro, NBCS on Twitter, NBC Sports JAKIBSports.com. Read them there. We kind of talked about linebacker. Same thing going on at safety now that Jaquiski Tartt is here, Dave. You got 3 potential options: Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps. I get the feeling that you just want to get Marcus Epps on the field. So if Tartt beats somebody out, I think he's going to beat out Anthony Harris. Is that how you see it, or is it any sort of amalgamation of the 3?
Yeah, I kind of look back at what they did last year, and I think last year there were a few forces that led them to the rotation they ended up with. I think it was Rodney coming off the injury and then realizing he couldn't take the full amount of reps. And also Marcus Epps kind of forced their hand a little bit last year because he was their best safety, and they thought, well, we got to play this guy. I was a little surprised that they brought Anthony Harris back because I thought he was okay last year, and I understand Gannon has the familiarity with them, but I don't know. I didn't do much for me. So
yeah,
I think it's probably going to be some sort of rotation at least early in the year. And if they start the season and they go, all right, well, these 2 guys are clearly our best bet, I think they would go to it. I went back and watched some of Tartt, by the way. There's a lot to like there. I don't think he's a great player, but he'll at least help them depth-wise because
what do you make of that, though? Because he went back, he started a lot of games on a very good defense, Tartt.
Mm-hmm.
They made a Super Bowl. They almost got back to a Super Bowl. He's been a starter 60 some odd games.
Yeah.
He got a 1-year deal from them at the veteran minimum. He got a 1-year deal now near the veteran minimum. Why, if he's that successful, what are people around the league missing with a guy who started 60 games for a good defense?
Yeah, I think he's just good. And if you're just a good player, I think you'd rather go younger. He's been in the league 7 years now. So, if you can get a rookie to do the same job, why wouldn't you do that? Eagles don't have that. They don't have any young players to fill that role. Kayvon Wallace to me has been a disappointment.
Yeah.
When they made that pick, I thought this guy in the 4th round, like we all watched him play at Clemson, and I thought this guy can play. I think health has played a role in that. He hasn't, even last year, they tried to get him on the field before Marcus Epps even, and he got hurt. So maybe there's something there. I understand why they can't rely on that because he's entering year 4 now?
Yeah.
And we just haven't seen it from him. So I think it'll be a combination.
It's Kayvon year. Epsie's in a contract year.
So maybe Kayvon's year 3. Yeah, Kayvon's year 3.
Kayvon's year 3. Yeah.
And by the way, Dave, if you're wondering why the Chargers let Kazir White walk out the door, I'm wondering why the 49ers let Jaquiski Tartt walk out the door. And, oh, by the way, San Francisco's defense is better than the Chargers defense. So they've done a better job at putting together a good defense the last couple of years with their coaching staff. That's why I'm not as sold on Jaquiski Tartt as some others are. All right, last thing, and I asked this question. Who did we have on yesterday? I asked this to. Jeff Mosher. When you get your grass time next week, who's the one guy you're going to make sure that you're not standing next to? You need at least a 1-person, if not 2-person buffer, because either they're going to talk your ear off or they haven't showered recently enough, or for whatever reason, you're going to make sure, I'm going to be a couple people down.
Did Mosher answer this question?
Oh, yeah.
No.
He did. He said, I just make sure I'm not next to either John Clark or BLG because they're too big.
They're too tall.
They make him look small.
Yeah.
That's
they're
good.
too tall. Yeah, that's a tough question. You can't.
I mean, trust me. I have an answer, but I won't tell you.
That's it. You're done. Very good. As long as we know that's all we need to know.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get a Now I'm going to get a complex when Dave runs 20 yards.
I see it, John. I want to start walking over to the other field.
He didn't wink, John, so I think you're safe. Dave, always a pleasure. You did a great job with the list. We got a lot of talk out of it here on Birds 365. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate you jumping on with us today. We're surely going to have you on before the season gets underway.
All right, take care.
Dave.
That is Dave Zangaro of NBC Sports Philly. He wasn't. He wasn't looking at you, McMullen. I don't think you have to sweat that one. You better not sweat that one, or people may be winking at you before the season
well,
starts.
hopefully it's going to cool off a little bit. I haven't checked the weather, but it's been a hot one. We got lucky that training camp didn't start this week.
Well, you'll be out there. It's not like it's going to drip down to the 70s on you next week. It'll be
I'll
hot
take
enough.
10 degrees less, though. I'll take that.
Understood. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. We need to put a bow on the show.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, got fake a mom. Mama go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
All right, running out of time on a Football Friday here on Birds 365. John, you mentioned to me right before the show started today, the Friday news dump.
Yeah, today's the day, man. I'm predicting it, Jody. It's coming today.
All right.
That's my prediction.
What will the Friday news dump be?
8 games to Deshaun Watson.
You think that's what's going to happen? All right, so then you know what the next question's going to be. Will it be appealed?
No.
NFL's going to eat it at 8?
NFL's going to lean on, independent arbiter Sue Robinson. It's her decision. 8's enough. I think they would suspend if it's 2. If it's less, if it's 4, I think they might appeal. 8, I think, would be a comfortable. In fact, I think that's what's taken so long. I think Sue Robinson
she's negotiating with Roger Goodell right now as to what he would be comfortable with so that they wouldn't appeal?
No, she was hoping the NFLPA would negotiate with Roger Goodell and come to a agreement. Ultimately, I think it's going to be 8 games, and I think there's a good chance it's going to happen today. That's my guess.
I am going
just
to
a guess, by the way. That's not a report.
On your guess, I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you. I agree with you that it's going to come out at 8 games. I disagree that it'll be accepted. I think the NFL will jump in and they will tie at a minimum, and they may go full entire year, but at a minimum, a not ended at 8 games, a continuous 8 games, they continue to be evaluated because you've got those 2 games, those 2 lawsuits left against Deshaun Watson. And I don't think the NFL wants to get bit in the rear end by those if something comes of those 2 lawsuits that make what transpired look even worse. What's the word I'm looking for, John? And it's just departing.
Well, I think
not open-ended, but
yeah, I think the civil cases aren't the problem. If there are more criminal charges, but then they could just reopen the whole thing and they could say, well, now there's criminal charges. So I think they're kind of protected from that standpoint. If there are new charges, then they could open a new case and put a second suspension on there. So I think they'll lean on the fact that we're evolving. We're letting the independent former judge make the decision. So as long as it's substantial, I think, and 8 games is pretty substantial, I think they'll lean on that and say, all right, our work is done. Let's get on with it. That's my guess.
We'll see if it comes down today. Probably will, because then Mac and Mac can't talk about it till Monday. I'll talk about it on my CBS Sports radio shows over the weekend and on WIPM on both Friday and Saturday with Glenn Macnow. So my week is just beginning, as a matter of fact. And yes, I'll thank the NFL in advance if the announcement comes down today. Give me plenty to talk about, and then give us plenty to talk about, because John, I plan to be back here Monday. How about you?
Yeah. 2-2, the big 2-2 this time, Jody.
Days, that is 2-2, and we're back on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.